Okay, this is John Haller. I'm going to try this again. I've had some technical issues here, trying a different way of doing things. Just wanted to give you a little bit of feedback on the Roe decision that just came out. It's the Dobbs decision that's overturning Roe. Of course, this is the first time I ever tried a live broadcast like this, so please be patient with me. So we have a decision today. It's being described variously as a seismic decision in earthquake. It was a 5-4 decision, although really 6 people concurred in the judgment. I've had a chance to look at the decision. It's pretty long. It's about 213 pages. Essentially, I say I'm having trouble again. So hopefully this is going to go through. So I'm going to talk, and we'll see if it happens. But for some reason my camera keeps dropping out here in StreamYard. But it's a 5-4 decision. Roberts concurred in the judgment. The majority decision, which would be Alito writing the decision, joined by Thomas, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Barrett, with a concurrence in the judgment by Roberts, appears to be essentially the same decision as what was issued back in about 7 weeks ago that came out. Alito, I don't really see any major changes from that decision that was leaked. The only changes would be that Alito, because that decision was the Supreme Court made the decision. Alito was given the task of writing the majority opinion. He wrote the majority opinion, and what happens is the majority opinion is circulated among all the justices, and then they join in the opinion. They write their separate concurrences, they write their dissents, and that type of thing. And so what Alito does in his majority decision is he addresses issues raised in Roberts' concurrence, which he never addresses Roberts by name. I think you can see there's some real tension on the court between Alito and Roberts. And that, so Alito just refers to it as, quote, the concurrence. It's a very, in a way, it's something that I've not really seen in these Supreme Court decisions. It's sort of a demeaning thing that Alito does. And Alito is very direct. So he just says, listen, I mean, the main holding on the first page of the decision, the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. And I don't know if I can, I'm trying to figure out how to share the screen here. And I've not done this except with other people. So anyway, you can get the decision, you can download it. I'll talk more about it Sunday. So let me just read a couple of quotes from the decision. Alito says the Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. And he goes on for about 71 pages, saying why this should be. So the states will get to decide. And it's interesting in the decision that, let's see if I can, I'm sorry, I'm doing this live, so it's kind of hard to manage all this stuff. In his concurring opinion, Kavanaugh also comes out very directly. I have to get here to it. Hang on just a second. It's a very, very long decision. So Thomas, they have an appendices of all the different state opinions or statutes and everything about how states are regulating this. And so Justice Thomas, concurring opinion, says this: I join in the concurrent opinion of the court because it correctly holds that there is no constitutional right to abortion. So now we get over to Kavanaugh writing a separate concurrence, and he says, I write separately to explain my additional views about why Roe was wrongly decided, why Roe should be overruled at this time, and the future implication of today's decision. So in my view, it's a pretty strong concurring opinion. And then you come to Chief Justice Roberts, who tries to do the old split the baby thing. It shows how weak Justice Roberts is. It's just, in my view, I think Alito was sort of saying in his majority opinion, the concurrence that he refers to it, and he's referring to Roberts' concurrence. It's just extremely weak. And then you have a separate dissenting opinion written by Breyer, Sotomayor, and Kagan. So you could call it's essentially a 5-4 decision. It will return everything to the states. If you've heard what I talked about 7 weeks ago in one of my updates, I talked about the leaked opinion. It's essentially that same opinion, except he just addresses the dissenting opinion, and the concurrence. I think it's a masterful work of legal reasoning. Now, what's the result of this going to be? There are a number of states that have trigger laws that if Roe is ever overturned, Roe or Casey, that really followed it, if Roe or Casey are overturned, these states say, our law will revert to this. So, for example, you have in Michigan, I believe it will revert to the Michigan statute, which makes abortion a felony. But now you have this lunatic attorney general, I think her name is Nesson, up in Michigan, and she came out in an interview on NPR about a month ago, and she said, well, if the new law comes into effect, we're not going to enforce it. I'm going to instruct people not to enforce the law that happens. So she's an absolute, I guess the best thing I could say, she's a lunatic, and she's not to be trusted. And so here we have an attorney general saying, I'm not going to enforce the law. So you're going to see the same thing happen with regard to the gun rights, the Second Amendment decision yesterday. Of course, there's been a meltdown all over among liberal politicians and the press about how this is just terrible. And the opinion essentially on Second Amendment said, listen, this is just a decision supporting the Second Amendment. Second Amendment doesn't mean it's second class. It's an important amendment, and the rights stated in the Second Amendment are important. And today the Dobbs decision overturning Roe is just saying, listen, this is not in the Constitution. This is something that's left up to the states to decide. So any state can go out today and they can enact a law allowing abortion. So I've said this for years, that even if Roe is overturned, the fight is going to be state by state. It's going to be the battle is now in every state capital in the United States. So that's one effect. So the trigger law, some of these laws banning abortion, and pretty strictly banning abortion will come into effect, or will come back into effect, in my opinion. The other thing that you need to be concerned about, and I haven't figured out how to share my screen here live, so I'll just tell you about this. I'm going to try to record this, and I'll release this separately on YouTube. I'm trying to record this. But the other thing to be aware of is that the Department of Homeland Security came out and issued a directive saying that they're expecting violence. There have been flyers that have been issued that are threatening pro-life churches and pregnancy decision centers all over the country. So you need to be in prayer about that. If you're a church leader or somebody involved in security at your church, you need to be prepared for these things. I think they're going to pick more high-profile targets. That's just my opinion. But the way the Department of Homeland Security, because we have lunatics in charge, this is my Orcus guy at Homeland Security, they issue a decision like, well, we need to be worried about violence on both sides because, the pro-life people are going to go out and do violence. And this is just absolute nonsense. So great decision, seismic, earthquake, 5-4, although Roberts concurred in the judgment, because here's Roberts. He can't make a decision. He doesn't have the ability anymore to make a decision that I'm going to stand up for what's right. So he tries to divide the baby. It's a very sad thing to see. So I'll look here. I don't know if there's any questions that people have. I'll take a look here in the chat comments. If anybody has any questions, you can type them in now because I'm kind of looking. There's also a question: what are the Democrats going to do with this? Are they going to use this? Is this going to change the results in the fall? And I really think that most people think that the state should be making this decision. So I don't know that it's going to have this big impact, but you're going to see, I think, a firestorm of response to this, way beyond anything that we might have anticipated. So let's see. Like I said, so if you have a question, go ahead and type it, and I'll be on here for a little bit more. I'll try to keep talking until it comes about. So great decision by Alito, just to summarize, overturning Roe. 5 justices of the Supreme Court concur and agree with that decision. There were a couple separate concurrences written by Thomas and Kavanaugh. They don't really change the opinion. They just sort of flesh out their reasons for joining in the opinion. So I think we have a solid 5-4, a 5-justice decision. So this shows you how important getting the right president in to appoint justices. This has taken 49 years. Actually, in January, it would be 50 years since Roe was enacted. So it's taken 50 years to get rid of this travesty. It's just an absolute, it was a horrible decision. I remember when I was in law school, I had a liberal professor of constitutional law at Indiana University. And we went through it because I started law school in 1977. So Roe's decision was only a few years old, and it really changed the way constitutional law was being interpreted. And how the Constitution was being handled. It was a very huge decision. And even he said, this liberal professor said, that there was just not a good, solid legal basis for the ruling in Roe. They did something, it was sort of, in my view, one of the first postmodern decisions. So we ruled this way because it makes us feel better, and we feel this is the right way, whether it's based in law or Constitution or anything like that. We're just going to do this. So great decision. So somebody asked a question. So will each state vote? Massachusetts, where you live, will probably stay the same. You're going to have, it's really going to be a divisive a divide among, you're going to have states like California, New York, Massachusetts. The blue states are going to support, or they're going to enact and allow abortions to proceed. And you're going to see some pretty extreme laws. You're going to see laws coming out saying, well, we'll pay for anybody in a non-abortion state to travel here. And you're going to see competing laws to try to shut that down, say from Texas or Mississippi, Alabama, some of the strong pro-life cases. So when does this decision take effect? This decision is effective. D-Mail asked this question. So when does this decision take effect? Now, or will it drag out? And the answer is, the answer is that it's going to take effect immediately. Somebody asked a question about why do we say it's 5-4 if Roberts can't make a decision. It's really a 6-3 decision in favor of the judgment of the court on this particular statute. But it's a 5-4 decision. It's or a 5-3 decision to overturn Roe. 5 justices agree to overturn Roe. Again, this is one of these things where you don't even know whether you should count Roberts or not, because he's just become such a kind of a fuzzy individual in the way he rules. Here's another question. Do you think this will further reduce a person's right to refuse the state-approved treatment for Charlie Vector 019er? I don't think that this decision will have any impact. That type of case will be decided on its own merits if it ever gets up to the court. Ohio does have Watchman for Christ. Yeah, Ohio has issued a pretty strong. It's a compromise. What you're seeing is you've seen over the 50 years of people trying to overturn Roe and enact statutes. It's forced the pro-life movement to compromise. So even in states that I would say are very strongly pro-life, the compromise has been, well, we'll only restrict abortions after 15 weeks or after viability. And this decision essentially says we could never come up with a good guideline on viability. That's why we're returning it to the states. And so what's happened is the pro-life community has, rightly or wrongly, I mean, this is just a fact, has compromised on trying to little cuts at Roe. They want to restrict it here, restrict it there. So I think now the pro-life community will have to decide, okay, now how are we going to approach this on a macro level and at each state? And so you're going to see a lot of legislative activity. But my main concern today is there have been flyers posted that at 8 p.m. on the day of the decision, you need to go after these pro-life churches and pregnancy decision centers. There's already been a lot of violence there. I'm not aware of any abortion center that's been attacked by a pro-life activist anywhere. I mean, I've seen a number of them close, and I think I read an article the other day that the last abortion center in Oklahoma just closed. And so, look, this is where the pro-life community can step up and do what the pro-life community has said. We want to help women. They might be in a difficult situation. We'll help them with the baby. We'll help arrange adoption and that type of thing. This is where the pro-life community can really shine. But anyway, so here's a question. Good question, Emily. Robert. Robert, you asked a question. Do you think this decision will cause people to move to other states? I think that some people that live in a state like California will be uncomfortable with the way that California is handling this, going to respond to this. Already some of the things I've seen in California are pretty extreme. And so you might see some people say, I just can't live in California anymore. I've got to move. And the question always is when you have people move from state to state. For example, there are a lot of Californians, because of economics and taxes and that sort of thing, are moving to Texas. And it's changing the political composition of Texas. So it's sort of like, leave your California politics, leave the things that make California so bad for you, leave them there, don't bring them to Texas. But I think some people will move. Some people that are very pro-abortion, they're going to move to states that allow abortion rights. I think that's a response that we're going to see. Let's see, here's another question. Is it legal for Planned Parenthood to bring women in from other states? If so, our tax dollars cover the cost. In a pro-abortion state, there are already plans afoot. I think even California may have enacted something, or I know it's at least been proposed, that they will use public tax dollars to pay for women to come from states that do not allow abortion. They will pay their travel to California. Now, there are some states that have laws against that, and so then this raises a question: is how is this all going to play out? This really decides that Roe is overturned. That's what it decides. It doesn't decide all the messy politics that are going to go. It doesn't reach a decision. So anybody, if you turn on, I'm sure I could turn on MSNBC right now, and I would see heads exploding all over the place about this is terrible and we're just attacking women's rights and that sort of thing. This is just absolute nonsense. Nobody today banned abortion in the United States. All this decision says is the states get to decide. Now, look, I think the pro-life community could make a strong case that the Constitution protects life and abortion should not be allowed anyway under the Constitution. I just don't know. I'm a pragmatist in some respects. While that would be a great thing to have happen, the only way to ban this nationwide is a pro-life amendment, an amendment to the Constitution banning abortion. And I don't see that happening right now. You have to get 2/3 of the states. You don't have 2/3 of the states. They're going to agree on anything, particularly a subject like this, because it's at least a third of the states or over a third of the states are strongly pro-abortion. So I just don't think it's a practical thing that's going to happen. Let's see. Looking for some other questions here. Is this a final decision or can it be overruled? This is MM. The question is this a final decision or can it be overturned? The answer is that this decision cannot be overturned until a case would come to a court with a different composition. So if a case comes with a different composition, you can, it could be overturned. I just don't think that that's going to happen in this environment for a while. And so you need to pray that we get a president, assuming there's an election in 2024. I'm not convinced of that, but assuming the 2024 election occurs and it's a pro-life president like President Trump, and there are a number of justices who are nearing retirement. I mean, Thomas, Alito are in their 70s. Pray for their health. I think they have issued some fantastic decisions. Now the question will be, yes, Sean, that's a very good question. Will Biden try to pack the court? That is something that you should be on the lookout for. They will try to pack the court. They've said they're going to try to pack the court. It's a very dangerous thing. If anybody thinks that the political fight over this is over now, it's just really intensified. So if I was using an earthquake scale, I would say that this is about at least a 7.8 in terms of a political earthquake, maybe an 8.1. It's pretty big. It's a big deal. As I said, when I first read Roe back in law school and studied it, the decision was just a horrible decision. And so for almost 50 years now, the Supreme Court, which was in the control of people who would support abortion until President Trump came in, they've supported Roe. Now Roe is overturned. The only way to do that is to pack the court. This is so insane right now. I saw them talking about getting rid of Kamala Harris as the vice president and putting her on the Supreme Court. This lady is not competent on anything that I've seen. I'm sorry. And now they want to put her on the Supreme Court and they want to add justices to the Supreme Court. But look, they have a window here. If all the polls are correct, there's going to be a shift in the control of Congress, and the Senate is looking likely in November if there's an election. I always will qualify it if there is an election. And I don't put anything past the regime, the Biden regime right now in that regard. So let's see. Somebody says you are correct, John. Love those comments. Keep them coming. This is going to be a very turbulent time, and you need to, if you're, like I said, if you're involved in a pro-life ministry, a church that's pro-life, you need to be very heightened and aware of what you're going on in your surroundings over the next week, if not further. Sean says Harris as a justice, sort of a big grin. Yeah, that would be, but it's being floated all the time. I just can't believe that they're going to do that. Somebody else had a question up here. Does this have the potential to prevent women from getting access to birth control in general? Great question, Margaret. That's going to be a difficult decision. So there are drugs that are used that are abortifacients. That's been a controversy in the pro-life community for a while as to whether you should use those type of drugs if you're truly pro-life and a Christian. That's an open question. I think the other thing, I forgot about this, the other thing I think you're going to see too is you need to understand, watch what happened with the Biden regime when they came in. When they came in day one, they had stacks of executive orders prepared to undo everything that the Trump administration had tried to put in place. And they systematically tore everything down in about a week. My opinion is if there's a Republican president that gets elected in 2024, again, assuming there's an election, that one of the things they almost have to have a cabinet position, the temporary cabinet secretary in charge of overturning all of the executive orders. And they ought to have stacks of notebooks. I've said this before, that if it's a Republican president, he gets sworn in and he says, like, you guys enjoy the parade. If I have time later, I'm going back to the White House because I have to sign all of these executive orders to undo all the garbage and the destruction that's been done by the Biden regime. I'm going to be in my office signing things till my hand falls off. And those things, they need to have notebooks of these things prepared. And I hope somebody in the Republican Party is doing this, what I would call a real Republican, not these rhino people like Liz Cheney, who may not be around. So anyway, I think also, assuming that this is we know that the spiritual war that goes on behind this abortion decision. I saw somebody talking about Luciferian. I think today you are going to see a lot of what I can only describe as demonic activity opposing this. This Roe was a decision that the destroyer loved. And so there's going to be a lot of activity against that. And I just think you need to be prepared for it. Be careful where you go. Always be aware, situational awareness. Watch where you're going. Pray for people. Pray for your church and that type of thing. I think you need to be, I think you just need to be aware of what's going on. So Richard Neal, he asked a question. Roe has been overturned in a decision by 5 justices of the Supreme Court. Chief Justice Roberts, concurred in the decision, but his concurrence is, I don't even know if it's worth reading. It's just, he says at the beginning of this, we grant a certiorari to decide one question, whether all pre-viability prohibitions on elective abortions are unconstitutional. And so he tries to divide the baby. It's just, I think Alito is right. This Roberts' concurrence is just, it's garbage, in my opinion. I'm sure that I'll never have to do that. I think I saw a comment by Molly. Hang on here. Well, I've lost that particular decision. I think it was Molly who wrote it, and it looked like a good comment. Now I can't find it because this thing keeps scrolling with all the additional comments. But so if you want to retype it, that would be great, and I'll try to respond to it. Here's Margaret. We also need to be careful that we are not unequally yoking with non-believers over this. Yeah, that's a difficult question, Margaret. I mean, we have to be careful with that. I mean, the discrete issue is, the abortion issue. And sometimes we're going to have to, I think, as a pragmatic decision, you're going to have to join with people who you don't agree with in your Christian beliefs. They may not align with your Christian beliefs, but you have to be careful that you don't get taken down the road that they want to go. That's what I think. Somebody asked a question, what do you mean if there's an election? Look, the practical, you need to understand that the regime that we are in right now, they always talk about attacks on democracy and losing democracy. They don't care about democracy. They care about their position. So if you oppose their position, you oppose democracy. They're totalitarian. They're totalitarian Marxist leftist. And they will do anything to stay in power. They have the reins of power right now. They have Congress. They have the Senate. They get these Republicans who capitulate to them. We just saw that on some of the gun legislation this week. So we have an election coming, and there are plans afoot by people on the right to make sure the elections are conducted according to rules. They are seeing the practical thing is the polling is just horrible for Democrats right now, and they're going to lose the election. Well, how do you stop losing an election? Is you interfere with the election. And so I'm just saying that I think there might be some rules put in place about, you can't vote unless you've had a certain treatment for a certain state approved treatment. That's just my opinion. I don't know if that'll happen, but I just understand you're seeing a lot of spiritual activity that's going to be unleashed here. Let's see, Linda, do I have any stats on how much this will affect abortion clinics nationwide? I saw someplace on one of the blogs recently, and if you look at you can download decision, go to SCOTUS blog, and they have they're live blogging the decisions released today, and there'll be a link in there, or on the Supreme Court website, there's a link to the decision. Thomas Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization is the title of the case. Case number 19-1392, 19-1392. You can download the PDF and you can read it. And they have an appendix after Alito's decision that lays out all of the various state laws. And I'm not sure, I haven't looked through the appendix. I don't know if these are ones that would be overturned or not. Anyway, this is a great decision. And we'll have to see what happens here today. So I'll take questions for a few more minutes, and then we'll let you go out and enjoy a nice day or get busy making sure that things at your church or pregnancy decision center that you support is protected. The flyers that released said that there would be protests at 8 p.m. tonight. And they're talking about pretty serious protests. I mean, look at this picture. I don't know if it's showing on the video feed because my live camera went out. But this picture of the Supreme Court, it's a fortress. Nobody can get in or out. It's just unbelievable what we're seeing. Good question. Did the Roe versus Wade have a worldwide effect? I'm losing that question again. Did it have a worldwide effect? Well, understand that if you go overseas, like, for example, you go to Europe, other countries, even Muslim countries are very pro-abortion in many respects. There's probably reasons for that because of the way that religion is constructed. But you can even go to, I was reading some papers in Israel, and you go to a city like Tel Aviv, and they're going to go like, "What do you mean you can't have an abortion?" there's not a strong pro-life movement in Israel that I know of. There are people that are very strongly pro-life, but I don't know that it carries the day in Israel. I think somebody's saying here that certain rich people will fund abortions through their foundations. That's, I think, already being done by some foundations. So maybe the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, these are all extremely liberal, left-wing, totalitarian control freaks that run these foundations, and they're going to be opposed to this decision. Let's see. Somebody says here, predicting the extent the Dem Lib evildoers will go coming for the November election, no bars, no holds barred. I think you're exactly right. They will do things that I don't think we've ever really seen before. So this is a time really for the church to be active, but to pray. Actively pray for spiritual protection. I would doubt that the justices are at the Supreme Court this morning. I think most of them are probably out of town. You need to pray for their safety. There's been direct threats, and pray that, Merrick Garland has a conversion experience, a Damascus Road experience today, so he will actually do things like enforce the laws of the United States. He's not doing that. There's a specific statute that prohibits protest outside the homes of justices and judges to influence a decision. It is a felony. They've been doing this for weeks. They even had one guy arrested who was coming to kill Justice Kavanaugh. We've never seen this really before in American history. And this will go to show you what the people right now in charge of most of the levers of power, except the Supreme Court, are willing to do. Like I said, the DHS sort of issued a directive. I don't know if I have it pulled up in my browser here. Let me see if I can find it. Sorry, this is hard to do live. I was reading it this morning. Let's see. Well, I don't see it. There was a directive issued by DHS that said that, need to be aware of violence because it happened on both sides of this issue. And I just shows you what happens when you have lunatics in charge. I don't see any pro-life issues right now. We've had problems with people that claim to be pro-life and go, bomb clinics and that type of thing. And that's, but you're going to see something different this time, I think, unless law enforcement steps in. But you're already seeing law enforcement not doing anything. So, somebody said that the world's upside down and crazy. I've been talking about this for a couple decades now, and it just seems to be getting worse. So listen, let me give you a preview of Sunday. So first I'll answer this question. Will there be martial law in Washington, D.C.? No, you won't have martial law in Washington, D.C. because the people who will be protesting and violent are the same political stripe as the people in power. They're not going to do anything about this. I would be shocked. You might see it in some restricted areas in states that are pro-life, protecting abortion clinics. So pray for the police officers that are there. A preview on Sunday. Look, folks, I did an update yesterday. You might want to go and look at that. Also like and subscribe if you think about it on our YouTube channel. I think I posted it to Real FBC on Rumble, and I think it might have been posted at Remnant Truth Network, the update that I did yesterday. There's a very volatile situation in the Middle East right now. Iran and Israel are effectively at war. And so what are the prophetic implications of that? Is this fit into any of the end time scenarios? And the answer to my question is, and I'm going to talk about it on Sunday, is yes, I do. And you have Biden going to the Middle East in a couple of weeks, trying to work out a deal with the Soviets. You're seeing a rapprochement between sort of a calming down of things between the Sunni powers, the big Sunni powers, Saudi Arabia, the rich people that have all the money, and Turkey. I mean, there was, Turkey had come out, oh, it was terrible what was done to Khashoggi, the Muslim Brotherhood so-called journalist that is supported by the Jeff Bezos Washington Post, the New York Times, and that sort of thing. He was murdered, and this crown prince was responsible. Well, now the crown prince goes to Turkey, and there you see him shaking hands and spending time with Erdogan. Erdogan even walked him up the steps to his plane, which Erdogan just doesn't really do. So this is a very big deal that happened the other day, and there's a lot of things going on there. So I talked a little bit about that in my update that I put up yesterday or last evening, and it's I could sit here with my computer and just go through things for hours talking to you about this and that. And I keep threatening to do that some Sunday. I'm just going to get up there with my iPhone and look at my Twitter feed and see what's happening. So I can only imagine. I haven't looked at the Twitter feeds yet, but I can only imagine the meltdown that's occurring there at the present time. It's just probably just look at this for a second. Well, here's a Twitter post from Caroline Glick. Now, I really like Caroline Glick. You know that. I quote her all the time, and I'm translating. She posted in Hebrew, but essentially she posted an article, links to an article on yahoo.com. Barack Obama says Supreme Court Roe versus Wade decision. Here, let me pull this article. Barack Obama says Supreme Court's Roe versus Wade decision is an attack on the essential freedoms of millions of people. You understand, they are prepared for this. They're going to act against this. Here's another example. So we know there's been this transgender, there's been men swimming in women's competitions. One even won an NCAA event. The Swimming Association came out and said, if you're born a male and you go through puberty, you can't compete in women's events, even if you take puberty or hormone blockers and that type of thing, because you've developed as a man, and there's a difference between men and women. I know that's a newsflash to a lot of people, but yesterday, I think it was yesterday, the Obama administration, the Biden administration, came out with proposed rules under Title IX. They say, oh, this is the 50th anniversary of Title IX. So we need to recognize Title IX. So we're going to put in all these proposed rules protecting transgenders in sports. So understand that even associations that decide things rationally, the totalitarian leftists in charge of the government are going to come out and say, no, you have to do it our way. You have to deny reality. You have to deny science. So they're going to be ready with this, and you're going to see some regulations, I think, come out in the next day or two that says you're going to see regulations or things about on federal land or on federal bases, you're going to have an unrestricted right to abortion, even if it's in the state of Texas. You're going to see that. So let's see here. Also, I want to say this too. I've known many women in my life that I've run into that have had abortions, and always understand that there's forgiveness at the cross, and so we need to. And it's a very difficult decision. I know it's a very painful decision that people's made. Somebody asked the question. I'm sorry for asking this, but why is the reversal of Roe versus Wade a bad thing? Well, it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a great thing, but it's a bad thing. What is truth? They don't like it because it allows abortions to be banned in some places of the United States. They don't want that. They don't want that banned anywhere. They want their clinics in largely minority neighborhoods to have unrestricted abortion. So that talked about that a little bit. So let me just say this: there is a great reset, and I view the. I guess this is showing my. You don't see my hands on the fact that my camera's not working. There is. There are extremists on both ends of this thing that are not to be trusted, and you need to watch. Now, I sort of view the line of extremism as more of a circle, so that there will be people who will support sort of a globalist takeover, totalitarian thing from the right and also from the left, and they'll join together at some point. So it'll come at you from both sides. So I don't agree that it's just going to come from one side or the other. I think it comes from both sides. But if you look at the scale of extremism as a circle and the extremists sort of overlap in part of that circle, then I think that's the way that that works out. So yeah, we need to be aware of that. Let's see. Okay. Um, well, anyway, I think I'll terminate this. So listen, watch where you're going for the next, at least the next week, because I think um, there's going to be decisions. There are going to be things that people are doing, and if you're involved in a church or a pregnancy decision center, you need to be actively looking to protect your property and the people that are coming there, and the people that work there, and the people that are involved. Um, this is so I don't think, as somebody said, this is not a bad decision. This was a great decision. This is one that we've prayed for a long time, and we finally got it. Now the tough work begins. This is what we're doing. So I'm going to try. I think I recorded this. I'll try to put it up on YouTube as a standalone, and I guess that's all we're doing. So be in prayer, be prepared, watch what's going on. God bless.